Rajasthan, India, a land famous across the world for its massive deserts, royal palaces, ancient kingdoms, and forgotten ruins, but hidden deep inside the dark and silent. Aravalli Hills lies a place that millions of people believe is cursed. A place where fear has survived for centuries. A place where the government itself officially warns people not to enter after sunset. This is Bhangarh Fort, known by many as one of the most haunted places in the world. Welcome to MystoReveal, a place where fear meets curiosity, where myths are investigated, and where every mystery hides a deeper truth waiting to be uncovered. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and prepare yourself for a journey beyond ordinary reality. Because once you enter this world, there is no turning back. Haunted castles in Europe, abandoned hospitals in America, cursed forests in Japan. Every country has its own dark legends. But India's Bhangarh Fort is different. Because this is not just an internet ghost story. This place has become a global mystery. YouTube creators, paranormal investigators, ghost hunters, and tourists from around the world travel thousands of miles just to experience the fear of standing inside these ruins after dark. And the moment you look at Bhangarh, you understand why. Broken temples stand silently under the burning Rajasthan sun. Empty marketplaces stretch across the ruined city, like reminders of a forgotten civilization. Giant stone gateways still guard the fort even after centuries of destruction. Monkeys run across collapsed walls while dry wind echoes through empty corridors, creating sounds that feel strangely unnatural. During the daytime, the fort looks historical, almost beautiful. But as evening slowly arrives, the atmosphere begins to change. Shadows become longer. The silence becomes heavier. Tourists begin leaving one by one. Local shopkeepers quietly close their stalls. And before darkness fully covers the fort, the entire area becomes empty, almost as if everyone is escaping something. But what exactly are they afraid of? Because according to local legends, Bhangarh is not just abandoned. It is haunted. People claim they hear strange whispers inside the ruins after sunset. Some say women screaming can be heard from empty temples late at night. Others describe feeling sudden panic, dizziness, chest pressure, or the terrifying sensation that someone invisible is watching them from the darkness. Some tourists even claim they saw shadowy figures moving between broken structures before suddenly disappearing. And perhaps the strangest part of all this is the official warning sign placed outside the fort by the Archaeological Survey of India, also known as the ASI. The sign clearly states that entering Bhangarh Fort before sunrise and after sunset is strictly prohibited. Now officially, this warning exists because the ruins become dangerous at night. Wild animals move through the area after dark. Visibility becomes poor, and the old structures can collapse unexpectedly. But over time, people started interpreting the warning differently. Slowly, the sign transformed into proof that something paranormal exists inside Bhangarh. And this is where the real mystery begins. Because once fear enters the human mind, every shadow starts looking alive. Today, from here in America, we are going deep into one of India's darkest mysteries to uncover the truth behind Bhangarh Fort. But this investigation is not just about ghosts. Because hidden behind the legends are shocking stories connected to history, science, psychology, political collapse, famine, folklore, and the terrifying power of human belief itself. And the deeper we go into this mystery, the more difficult it becomes to separate reality from imagination. The legends surrounding Bhangarh Fort are centuries old. In India, stories are not just entertainment, they become culture. They are passed from one generation to another until eventually nobody remembers where the truth ended and the myth began. And the most famous legend connected to Bhangarh is the story of Princess Ratnavati. According to local folklore, Ratnavati was the princess of Bhangarh and one of the most beautiful women in Rajasthan. People described her as intelligent, graceful, and extraordinarily attractive. Princes from nearby kingdoms supposedly wanted to marry her. But far away from the royal palace lived a powerful tantric named Singya, a practitioner of dark magic. According to the legend, Singya became obsessed with Ratnavati and desperately wanted her to fall in love with him. One day, the princess's servants visited the market to buy perfume and beauty products for the palace. Singya secretly cast a magical spell on one of the perfume bottles, hoping that when Ratnavati touched it, she would become hypnotized and fall under his control forever. But somehow, Ratnavati discovered the trap. Instead of using the perfume, she reportedly threw the bottle onto a giant stone. According to the story, the stone magically rolled toward Singya and crushed him to death. But before dying, the tantric cursed the entire city of Bhangarh. He declared that the kingdom would soon be destroyed and nobody would ever live there peacefully again. Soon after the curse, war reportedly struck the region. The city collapsed, thousands died, and Bhangarh slowly transformed into ruins. At least, that's what the legend says. But when historians searched for actual evidence supporting this story, they found something surprising. There are almost no strong historical records proving that Princess Ratnavati or the Tantric Singya ever truly existed. No reliable royal documents clearly mention them. No detailed inscriptions confirm the famous curse story, which creates a disturbing possibility. What if the most famous ghost story in India was never real at all? But the mystery of Bhangarh does not end there. Another popular legend tells the story of a holy saint named Baba Balunath. According to local beliefs, Baba Balunath was meditating in the area long before Bhangarh Fort was built. When the king decided to construct the city, the saint allowed it under one strict condition: the shadow of the palace must never fall upon his meditation site. For years the condition was respected. But eventually, as the palace expanded upward, its shadow reportedly touched the saint's sacred location, and according to the legend, that moment cursed Bhangarh forever. Again, the story sounds dramatic and supernatural. But once again, there is very little historical evidence confirming these exact events. So why do millions of people still believe these stories? Because human beings love mystery, especially mysteries connected to fear. Across the world, abandoned places naturally become connected with supernatural stories. In America, people fear haunted hotels and abandoned hospitals. In Europe, ancient castles become linked with ghosts. In Japan, forests become associated with spirits and curses. And in India, old forts and ruined cities often transform into places of paranormal legend. But Bhangarh became different because modern media amplified the fear to an enormous level. Television channels repeatedly called it India's most haunted fort. Social media creators uploaded overnight ghost challenges. Paranormal investigators arrived carrying cameras, EMF detectors, and spirit boxes trying to communicate with ghosts. YouTube thumbnails showed shadow figures and terrifying titles, designed to make viewers believe something evil existed there. And slowly, Bhangarh stopped being just a historical location. It became a symbol of fear itself. Local villagers living near the fort also helped keep the mystery alive. Many residents claimed they experienced unusual events around Bhangarh after dark. Some described hearing footsteps inside empty structures. Others reported strange noises coming from ruined temples late at night. A few villagers even believed invisible spirits protected the fort from outsiders. Over time, these stories spread across Rajasthan and eventually across all of India. And with every generation, the legends became darker. Some people claimed nobody who stayed inside the fort at night ever returned alive. Others believed paranormal forces trapped anyone foolish enough to challenge the curse. There were stories about people disappearing mysteriously, although no verified evidence ever proved such claims. But in haunted legends, proof is rarely important. Fear itself becomes enough. And fear spreads quickly, especially when a place already looks terrifying. Because perhaps the most fascinating thing about Bhangarh is not the ghost stories, it is the atmosphere. Visitors often describe a strange heaviness in the air. Even during daytime, certain areas feel isolated and uncomfortable. Dry wind moves through broken structures, creating echoes that sound almost human. Long, empty corridors create the illusion that someone is silently standing far away watching you. And because most people already expect paranormal activity before entering the fort, their imagination becomes stronger with every step they take inside. Now imagine this place after sunset. No tourists, no voices, no sunlight, only darkness, ruins, and silence. Suddenly, even ordinary sounds begin feeling supernatural. And somewhere inside those empty ruins, the line between imagination and reality slowly begins to disappear. The deeper we go into the mystery of Bhangarh Fort, the more one question begins to disturb everything we think we know. If there is no strong evidence of ghosts, then why do so many people still experience fear inside these ruins? Why do visitors from completely different backgrounds report similar feelings: panic, heaviness, anxiety, and the strange sensation that someone invisible is standing nearby? Because this is where the story of Bhangarh stops looking supernatural and starts becoming psychological. From here in the United States, paranormal investigators often study haunted locations using scientific tools. Across America and Europe, abandoned hospitals, castles, and old prisons have all been investigated using thermal cameras, electromagnetic detectors, infrared sensors, and audio equipment. And over time, scientists discovered something shocking. Many haunted experiences can actually be explained by the environment itself. One of the strongest theories connected to haunted places is something called infrasound. Most people have never heard of this before, but it may explain why places like Bhangarh feel terrifying even when nothing paranormal exists there. Infrasound refers to extremely low-frequency sound waves below 20 Hz. Human ears usually cannot consciously hear these frequencies, but the body and brain can still react to them, and the effects can be deeply disturbing. Researchers discovered that exposure to certain low-frequency vibrations can create anxiety, fear, nausea, sadness, chills, and even hallucinations. Some people exposed to strong infrasound reported the terrifying feeling that someone invisible was standing near them. Others experienced panic attacks, pressure in the chest, or sudden emotional discomfort without understanding why. Now think carefully about Bhangarh Fort, an abandoned city filled with broken stone structures, empty hallways, underground chambers, wind moving constantly through narrow pathways and ruined buildings. All these conditions can naturally generate low-frequency vibrations, which means the fear people experience inside Bhangarh may not come from ghosts at all. It may come from invisible sound waves interacting with the human nervous system. And this theory becomes even more fascinating when we look at scientific experiments conducted around the world. In one famous study, researchers secretly exposed participants to low-frequency sounds during a live concert performance. Many people later described strange emotions, fear, discomfort, sadness, and paranormal sensations, even though they had no idea they were being exposed to anything unusual. Another study suggested that certain frequencies can vibrate parts of the human eye, creating blurry movement or dark figures in peripheral vision. In simple words, under specific conditions, the human brain can literally create ghost-like experiences without any ghosts actually being present. And suddenly, Bhangarh begins looking less like a paranormal mystery and more like a perfect psychological trap. But infrasound is only one part of the story. The geography surrounding Bhangarh may also play a major role in creating its terrifying atmosphere. The fort lies within the ancient Aravalli mountain range in Rajasthan, India, one of the oldest geological formations on Earth. This region experiences seismic activity and falls within an earthquake-sensitive zone. Small underground vibrations, shifting stones, temperature changes, and structural stress inside ancient ruins can all create strange sounds and physical sensations. During daytime, these effects are usually ignored because the brain feels safe in sunlight. But at night, everything changes. Darkness completely transforms how the human brain processes information. When visibility becomes limited, the brain enters a hyper-alert survival mode. Every sound suddenly feels important. Every movement becomes suspicious. Every shadow appears threatening. This is an ancient survival instinct carried by humans for thousands of years. Long before modern civilization existed, darkness meant danger. Predators hunted at night. Enemies attacked in darkness. Unknown sounds could mean death. So the human brain evolved to become extremely cautious in silent, dark environments. That instinct still exists today, which means when people enter a place like Bhangarh Fort after sunset, ancient survival mechanisms inside the brain begin activating automatically, and fear starts shaping reality. This psychological process becomes even stronger because of something called suggestibility. Suggestibility means the human mind is heavily influenced by expectation. If someone tells you before entering a location, "This place is haunted," your brain immediately becomes more sensitive to unusual sounds, shadows, and movements. You begin searching for danger without realizing it. And because your senses are now focused on fear, ordinary environmental details suddenly start feeling supernatural. A gust of wind becomes a whisper. A moving branch becomes a shadow figure. An echo becomes footsteps. And once fear fully enters the mind, logic becomes weaker. Scientists tested this phenomenon repeatedly in controlled experiments. In some studies, participants entered completely ordinary buildings after being told the locations were haunted. Even though nothing paranormal existed there, many still reported ghostly feelings, cold spots, strange presences, and fear, which reveals something deeply unsettling. Sometimes, belief itself creates the haunting. Another important psychological phenomenon connected to Bhangarh is called pareidolia. This happens when the brain tries to find familiar patterns in randomness. Humans are biologically programmed to recognize faces and human shapes extremely quickly because this ability helped our ancestors survive danger. But this survival skill also creates illusions. That is why people often see faces in clouds, figures inside shadows, or human forms in darkness. Inside abandoned ruins like Bhangarh, pareidolia becomes even stronger because lighting conditions are poor and the environment already feels threatening. A broken wall suddenly looks like a standing person. A shadow appears like someone moving. A ruined statue looks alive for a split second. And because fear already exists inside the mind, the brain automatically interprets these visual mistakes as paranormal experiences. This is exactly why haunted locations across the world share similar stories despite existing in completely different cultures. In America, abandoned hospitals become haunted. In Europe, old castles become haunted. In Japan, forests become haunted. And in India, ancient forts become haunted. Different countries, different religions, different histories, but the same psychological patterns. Because the real connection is not ghosts. The real connection is human fear. But perhaps the most powerful force keeping Bhangarh's legend alive is something called confirmation bias. Confirmation bias means people naturally focus on information that supports what they already believe while ignoring information that contradicts it. So if someone visits Bhangarh expecting paranormal activity, they pay close attention to every strange sound, uncomfortable feeling, or unusual coincidence while ignoring all the normal explanations around them. Later, when they tell the story to others, only the frightening details survive. And over time, the story becomes more dramatic. A strange noise becomes a whisper. A shadow becomes a ghost. Fear becomes evidence. This is how legends grow stronger generation after generation. And modern media made this process even more powerful. Television channels repeatedly described Bhangarh as India's most haunted fort. Paranormal YouTubers uploaded overnight challenge videos designed to maximize fear and suspense. Social media creators exaggerated experiences because terrifying stories attract more views. Slowly, the internet transformed Bhangarh from a historical ruin into a global horror symbol. And once millions of people start believing a place is haunted, every visitor unknowingly helps continue the myth. Because fear is contagious. One frightened person affects another. Stories spread emotionally faster than facts. And eventually the legend becomes stronger than reality itself. But despite all the science and psychology, there is still something undeniably strange about standing inside Bhangarh Fort. Even rational people often describe feeling uncomfortable there. Not necessarily because they believe in ghosts, but because abandoned places naturally force humans to confront something deeper. Death, time, isolation. The ruins of Bhangarh are reminders that entire civilizations can disappear. Markets once filled with life become silent. Palaces collapse into dust. Human achievements slowly decay under nature and time. And maybe that feeling, the feeling people call haunting, does not come from spirits at all. Maybe it comes from realizing how temporary human existence truly is. Because when people walk through Bhangarh, they are not just walking through ruins. They are walking through the remains of forgotten lives. And sometimes, that reality is far more terrifying than ghosts. But if science can explain the fear, and psychology can explain the experiences, then one final question still remains unanswered. What actually happened to Bhangarh? Because every ruined city has a real history buried beneath the myths. And in most cases, that real history is often far more tragic than the ghost stories people create afterward. Long before Bhangarh became famous as a haunted location, it was once a thriving kingdom in Rajasthan, India. Historians believe the city was established during the 17th century by Raja Madho Singh, a ruler connected to the royal kingdom of Amber, which later became Jaipur. At its peak, Bhangarh was not a cursed ruin. It was a prosperous settlement filled with temples, marketplaces, gardens, palaces, and homes. Thousands of people once lived inside these walls. Merchants traded goods through busy markets. Priests worshipped inside beautifully carved temples. Soldiers guarded the city gates. Music, celebrations, and royal ceremonies once echoed through the same ruins that today stand completely silent. And perhaps that is the strangest thing about abandoned places. When humans look at ruins, they see emptiness. But history sees life that once existed there. Walking through Bhangarh today is like walking through the skeleton of a forgotten civilization. Every broken wall once belonged to someone's home. Every collapsed structure once held human dreams. And over time, nature slowly erased everything. But contrary to the popular legends, historians found no strong evidence that Bhangarh was suddenly destroyed by a curse or paranormal disaster. Instead, the decline appears connected to politics, economics, war, environmental conditions, and famine. As nearby kingdoms became stronger, Bhangarh slowly began losing importance. Trade routes shifted. Political power changed. New forts and cities emerged nearby, especially Ajabgarh, which gained strategic importance over time. Gradually, Bhangarh's economic influence weakened. And then came one of the worst disasters in Indian history, the Chalisa famine. In the late 18th century, massive drought struck large parts of northern India. Historians believe climatic disturbances connected to El Niño severely affected rainfall across the region. Crops failed, water sources dried up, food became scarce, entire communities struggled to survive. This famine became known as the Chalisa famine because it occurred around the Hindu calendar year 1840. Vikram Samvat. Millions of people across India suffered. Cities weakened, villages collapsed, and migration became unavoidable. For settlements already struggling economically, the famine was devastating. People abandoned homes in search of survival. Trade stopped, agriculture collapsed, and slowly cities like Bhangarh emptied out. Not because of ghosts, not because of curses, but because history itself can destroy civilizations more effectively than any supernatural force ever could. And this changes everything. Because once humans abandon a place, nature immediately begins reclaiming it. Buildings decay, structures collapse, animals move in. Wind and weather slowly erase human presence. Silence replaces life, and eventually, the emptiness itself begins creating fear. Especially in cultures deeply connected to folklore and spirituality. This is one reason abandoned locations across the world almost always become associated with paranormal stories. Humans struggle emotionally with emptiness. When we see massive ruins with no people living inside, the brain automatically asks, why was this place abandoned? And often, supernatural explanations feel emotionally more satisfying than historical ones. A curse sounds more dramatic than famine. Ghosts sound more memorable than economic collapse. And over generations, mythology slowly replaces reality. But perhaps the most fascinating thing about Bhangarh is that both history and folklore now exist together permanently. Even if science explains the fear and history explains the destruction, the legends still survive because humans need mystery. Rational explanations may satisfy the mind, but stories satisfy emotion. That is why millions continue visiting Bhangarh every year. Not because they expect proof of ghosts, but because people are naturally attracted to the unknown. Fear creates curiosity, and curiosity keeps legends alive. Today, Bhangarh Fort has become one of India's most famous tourist destinations. Visitors arrive from different parts of India and from countries around the world. During daytime, the fort looks more historical than terrifying. Families walk through the ruins taking photos. Guides narrate ghost stories dramatically to tourists. Shops outside sell snacks, drinks, and souvenirs connected to the haunted reputation of the fort. Ironically, the ghost stories that once frightened people now help support the local economy. Hotels advertise haunted tours. YouTubers record overnight investigations. Social media creators upload cinematic horror edits. And every new video keeps the legend alive for another generation. In many ways, Bhangarh no longer belongs only to history. It belongs to modern internet culture. But despite all the dramatic stories, the Archaeological Survey of India continues treating Bhangarh primarily as a protected historical site, not as a paranormal location. Archaeologists studying the ruins found evidence of ordinary human civilization, coins, pottery, temples, structural remains, and signs of urban life. No supernatural evidence was ever discovered. No proof of curses, no proof of ghosts, only evidence of history. And maybe that is the greatest irony of all. Human beings often search for supernatural mysteries while ignoring the very real human stories hidden underneath them. Because the real tragedy of Bhangarh is not paranormal. The real tragedy is that an entire city filled with life slowly disappeared from history until only ruins remained. And perhaps that reality feels more haunting than ghosts ever could. Because one day, every modern city on Earth may also become ruins. Every building humans create today will eventually decay. Civilizations rise, civilizations fall, time destroys everything. And standing inside Bhangarh Fort forces people to confront that uncomfortable truth. Maybe that is why the fort feels so unsettling. Not because spirits live there, but because it reminds us how temporary human existence truly is. Even the strongest kingdoms disappear. Even the grandest palaces collapse. And eventually, silence takes everything back. That silence is what people fear inside Bhangarh. Not ghosts, but the realization that time eventually erases all human power, wealth, beauty, and achievement. And perhaps that is why haunted places fascinate humanity so deeply. Because deep down, ghost stories are never really about ghosts. They are about us, our fear of death, our fear of being forgotten, our fear of the unknown. Bhangarh Fort stands today not as proof of the supernatural, but as proof of how powerfully the human mind transforms mystery into legend. A ruined city became a curse. Silence became evidence. Fear became mythology. And somewhere between history, psychology, and folklore, the legend of Bhangarh became immortal. So the next time you hear about a haunted place somewhere in the world, Stop for a moment and ask yourself, is it truly supernatural? Or is it simply a place where history, fear, and imagination collided together? Because sometimes, the most powerful ghosts are the ones created inside the human mind itself. And maybe that is the real reason places, like Bhangarh, continue to survive in human memory. Not because of ghosts, but because they remind us how small we truly are against time. Empires disappear, kings are forgotten, cities turn into ruins, but stories survive forever. And somewhere inside those silent walls of Bhangarh, history and fear still exist together, waiting for the next person brave enough to walk through its gates. If you enjoyed this journey into one of India's darkest mysteries, then make sure to subscribe to MystoReveal and become part of a community that explores the unknown beyond myths, beyond fear, and beyond ordinary reality. Here, we don't just tell stories, we uncover the truth hidden inside them. From ancient civilizations and haunted legends to unexplained mysteries and forgotten history. Every video on this channel is a journey into the secrets the world left behind. So hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next mystery might completely change the way you see reality itself. And remember, sometimes the scariest thing is not what hides in the darkness, but what the human mind creates inside it.